I have 8:58 on my watch, so we'll give it another minute and try to start pretty promptly at 9 a.m. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to the December 15th, 2020 Oregon Tourism Commission meeting. To everyone who has joined us through Travel Oregon's industry YouTube channel, good morning and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. As our meeting today is being convened virtually, I will go around and ask each commissioner to introduce themselves. I'm Scott Youngblood from the Embassy Suites Hotel, Portland, Washington Square. And maybe we'll go next to Vice Chair Nigel.
Hi, my name is Nigel Francisco. I am the CEO of Ninkasi Brewing Company in the Willamette Valley.
Any other volunteers?
Good morning, I'm Don Anway with Newman Hotel Group in Ashland, Oregon.
Good morning, I'm Lucinda DeNovo, Director of Sales and Marketing at the Mill Casino Hotel and RV Park located in Coos Bay, Oregon.
I am Greg Willits with Five Pine Lodge and Conference Center in overcast but beautiful Sisters, Oregon.
Richard Boyle. Go ahead, Mia.
Okay. Hello, I'm Mia Shepard with Little Creek Outfitters and Juniper River Adventures and from Maupin, Oregon. Hello.
Richard Boyles, President of Merite Hotel Management and Sycan Development Corporation.
Well, good morning, commissioners, and I'd also like to acknowledge that there are two commissioners, Commissioners Ponzi and Sugahara, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but will be in our thoughts, and I will ask each commissioner present to ask no fewer than 11 questions during the updates portion of today's meeting, of course, in honor of Kenji. So, commissioners, thank you for answering the call to service as we strive to make a better life for Oregonians through strong, sustainable local communities. You've taken up this call to service during one of the most difficult chapters in our history, and for what it's worth, I'm grateful to be navigating this time with each of you. We are now pushing through the darkest days of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are experiencing national and local unrest, which reflects the need for change. And of course, these are in the immediate wake of wildfires that have taken an unimaginable toll on the lives of fellow Oregonians. Lost jobs, lost homes, lost businesses, and lost lives have punctuated our stories since our last in-person meeting, if you can believe it, 10 months ago in Independence. There may be no more appropriate metaphor than that of a phoenix rising from the ashes to define the moment in which we find ourselves. The coming months will be pivotal as a time of renewal and rebirth, and as we set upon the path of approving our next strategic plan and serving our communities as we rebuild with minds and hearts open to new opportunities, new possibilities, and new ways to give life to the vision, mission, values, and commitment to equity that underpin all that we at the Oregon Tourism Commission and Travel Oregon do. I'd like to offer this time to you, commissioners, to share any thoughts you have as we look forward to a new year and many new beginnings.
Scott, if I may, I couldn't agree more. These are indeed the darkest days of COVID. But I am hopeful, and I'm touched by the ingenuity and generosity of the industry and others in these moments. Last week, our local Visitor and Conventions Bureau, the Coos Bay North Bend Visitor and Conventions Bureau, announced that they will be doing Operation Gift Card with the cities of Coos Bay, North Bend, Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, and others. And the group managed to raise over $35,000 to buy gift cards for local restaurants. And so those we are in the process of purchasing those right now. And then on December 18th, we will be selling those gift cards half price to people in our area. And so the hope is that we can continue to raise money each time we do this so we can continue this program. And it's programs like this, it was really stemmed from the mayor of Coos Bay and the mayor of North Bend wanting to find ways to support the community. They brought the tourism industry in, and I know there are examples of this all over the state, but these are the moments that give me hope and make me feel that we will be able to get through this and get on the other side of it. So thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Lucinda. Commissioners, anyone else? All right. Well, thank you, Lucinda, again, for sharing your thoughts, and everyone for being with us this morning. Commissioners, I'd like to acknowledge that in holding a live stream meeting, we meet all the public meeting notice requirements according to state law. On Monday, November 30th, the commission meeting notice was posted to the commission meetings webpage and announced in the industry e-news. This includes the agenda, public comment form and instructions, and a link to this live stream. No comments have been received at this point, but should any be submitted, they will be distributed to the commission and will become part of the public record for today's meeting. And so I guess we will switch to commission business. I'd like to confirm that everyone has received and had a chance to review their commission packet, including the financial reports.
Yes.
Good, 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 good. Thank you all. And I'd also like to thank Commissioners Francisco and Boyles for reviewing the financials with myself and Todd and Jeff and Kathleen prior to this meeting. Nigel, would you like to provide the commission with an update?
Yep, thanks, Scott. So we did go through the financials yesterday. The agency has responded effectively to meet the budget needs of the commission. And I would again commend Kathleen on a great job of presenting that to us yesterday. So thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And Kathleen, are you available to kind of proceed with a more in-depth financial update?
I am, as soon as I unmute. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sarah, I believe, is going to bring up just one slide. And I'm just going to give you an update about where we are from a lodging tax standpoint for the first, as we close out the first half of the year. So our lodging tax revenue as of December through Q2 is $12,125,178. The actual tax for Q2 itself was $8.9 million. This is $3.9 million ahead of the forecast for the quarter. Compared to the same period last year, TLT revenue is down 52%, over $13 million. The first half of fiscal year 20 was $25.4 million, so it's coming in at one is about just over half. And we will continue to monitor projections versus actual receipts and the lodging tax data as provided by the Oregon Department of Revenue. So that is it for my DLT update. Any questions?
This is Richard, obviously, I guess, but I do have a question, not so much for Kathleen probably as perhaps for Todd or Jeff. Obviously, this report contains some encouraging news. We've had some bit better business levels than anticipated. I know at our businesses, though, we're seeing a pretty dramatic trailing off in revenues in our lodging operations. It's not uncommon to be thinking about budget revisions, and certainly, with these results. I'm curious what your forecasts are going forward, and whether the contemplated approach is one of prudence and preservation of funds, or what your thoughts are about the plan.
Richard, thank you for the question. It's certainly a valid one, given what we just heard from Kathleen on how we're faring against budget for the first 6 months of this year. Keeping in mind, of course, that the Q2 revenue, as was seen on Kathleen's slide, is July, August, September revenue, and that quarter, in essence, performed better than anticipated. Again, because it's July, August, September, it does not take into account that as cases of COVID began to surge across the state, that there were additional steps that were taken to mitigate that. So I've heard from lodging operators, for example, across the state, that were looking at one point at better than anticipated Novembers and Decembers that dissipated when the pause and the freeze needed to be put in place. And so that had changed the financial forecasting for them. So we're still erring on the side of being conservative at this time, and looking at a couple of different forecasting models. One of them has us up slightly for the year. In other words, some of the gains made in that we just saw in the second quarter are basically banked against over the next 2 quarters. We're just, as we look at what the recovery is really going to look like. So we're looking at Q3 and Q4 as being lean quarters at this time, and that's still where our forecast lies. So we are not in a position at this time to bring forward any kind of a budget modification to the commission. We will have a meeting again in February, and so we'll have an opportunity to review our financials again at that time and bring forward a budget modification if it seems prudent at that point. The other thing I would keep in mind, and Richard, you raised this point yesterday when we had our financials review, and that is that the month of September may have seen better than anticipated revenues, in part because of the catastrophic wildfires that occurred in Oregon. And that for those rooms that were paid for, as was noted yesterday, by insurance companies or by individuals, lodging tax still applied. If there were Red Cross or FEMA and others that were taking care of those rooms, and perhaps lodging taxes were waived. So we may have seen better than anticipated revenues in the month of September, but for a very tragic reason. And so we're just not in a position at this point to recommend a budget modification. And we'll revisit it in February when we come back and meet again as a commission.
Great, thanks for that response, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the question, Richard. Any other questions for Kathleen or on the topic of financials? All right. Well, Kathleen, again, thank you for taking the time to present this morning. And commissioners, have you all had the opportunity to review the October 6th meeting minutes? And are there any questions or comments relating to those? All right. Well, if not, then I will take a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Richard. And is there a second?
Second. A second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposition? All right. Well, then the October 6th commission meeting minutes are approved and will be posted to the commission section of the Travel Oregon Industry website. At this time, I'd like to turn the screen, I guess, over to Todd to offer us his kind of his perspective, his take on what's happening in the world, and to begin our program.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And commissioners, thank you again for your service to Oregon's travel and tourism industry. Your opening comments, Scott, and your additive comments, Lucinda, about the heart of this industry, even in the midst of what feel like the darkest days of this pandemic, are certainly where we find our hope as we look ahead to reimagining what the future of the travel and tourism industry can be and should be for Oregon's economy. I look at this month in particular as we come to the end of 2020, and I don't think it's I guess I'll call it I don't think it's a mistake that this month, as we come up upon the end of the year, is one that is full of faith traditions, of cultural celebrations, of a number of events, activities of historical and cultural significance that really center on hope. And I think, Scott, about your comment about the metaphor of the phoenix rising from the ashes, and the one that came to mind for me is how next week is the solstice. And for many, we think of the solstice as representing the shortest day, the longest night of the entire year. And yet it was a day of celebration. It was a day of celebration because it was seen as the birth of the sun. Because of every day after that, the days get longer and the days get brighter. And so as I reflect on this last year, I'm mindful of the challenges that we've faced together. The ongoing global pandemic, the national and local social unrest that has shown us that change wasn't just needed, it's long overdue. That we've experienced devastating wildfires that have resulted in the loss of lives and homes and businesses. And any one of these events would have carried repercussions for tourism in Oregon. And as hard as they've collectively been on Oregon and on Oregon's economy, I've been reminded time and time again, as Lucinda pointed out in her comments, of the importance of compassion, the importance of resiliency, the need to humbly and personally seek clarity on how we can be and how we can do better. And how very grateful I am for the opportunity to work with each and every one of you, the incredibly gifted team at Travel Oregon, and our travel and tourism partners across the state to reimagine what tourism means for this state and for her people's future. You know, Travel Oregon is unwavering in its commitment to serve as that trusted resource to the tourism industry and to our visitors. And in accomplishing this, we're going to remain resolutely focused on inspiring visitors through marketing and communications at the appropriate time, and engaging with them and the tourism industry to foster respectful visitation programs. We're going to be joining with our industry partners to bolster programs that strengthen destinations across the state. We'll be investing in grants, making direct investments, and also offering training programs that will aid the industry's recovery and resiliency. And we'll be growing our understanding of racial equity and deepening our relationship with others that are working in this space. being clear-eyed on how we can best serve as that trusted source to Oregon's tourism economy, we recently completed the analysis of our 2020 tourism industry stakeholder survey. The survey was designed on behalf of the Oregon Tourism Commission and the state's 7 official regional destination management organizations, the RDMOs, to be able to prompt feedback from individuals and organizations across the state that are engaged in the tourism economy. As it has in the past, this year's survey results aid the Commission, the Travel Oregon team, and the RDMOs in setting a strategic direction for Travel Oregon and for the region's RCTP plans. The input from our colleagues is going to be used to make funding and programmatic recommendations for setting priorities for our strategic planning efforts in marketing, in grants, in tourism-related infrastructure, visitor management, and so much more. Here to provide us with a recap of the results of this year's survey is the director of our Regional Cooperative Tourism Program, Harry Delgarden. Harry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd, and good morning, commissioners. Good to see you all. Today I'm here with Colin Cares of Driftline Consulting, and like Todd said, Colin's going to provide us an overview of this year's stakeholder survey reports. Like Todd mentioned, we developed 7 survey reports for the 7 RDMOs to really kind of be that baseline planning level for all the planning processes that are about to get underway here. And to really kind of just get us into that flow of where we are within the planning process. I'm going to share my screen here just to show where we are on the timeline, so bear with me. Here we are. All right, so in terms of getting things all dialed in for the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program and the corresponding planning timeline, we're right there at that second bullet point with the survey reports. After these survey reports are distributed to the travel and tourism industry, our regional destination management organization partners will go about drafting plans. And then in March this year, we're going to launch the regional stakeholder gatherings via Zoom and via our VT planning platform. So the industry will have an opportunity to weigh in on those plans and the planning process, and really kind of help shape and mold, the data, and shape and mold the input that they had already given via the statewide survey. So this will all contribute to RDMOs drafting a final plan, and then Travel Oregon and the Commission approving those plans set to go into the next fiscal year. So a lot of work ahead of us this spring, and definitely a lot of opportunity for the travel and tourism industry to weigh in on how those regional plans develop, what's included, and what programming is selected in moving forward. I will caveat all that our regional partners are still in emergency management protocols. That's via the RCTP guidelines addendum that the Commission passed last spring. So with that, definitely a lot of opportunity and a lot of work ahead. I want to give Colin a good amount of time today to go over those results from a statewide perspective. And as I said earlier, these will be released via the industry website tomorrow, and via e-news going out to the industry as well. So a quick introduction for Colin Cares. Colin has been with Driftline Consulting since 2016, and Driftline Consulting has really provided us the analysis and baseline surveys for our planning platform with the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program, and correspondingly for Travel Oregon. So it's been a great pleasure to work with Colin. He always brings really insightful approach, and I'll turn it over to him to walk us through this year's results.
Great. Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Todd, and good morning, everyone. So the survey was conducted online between October 5th and 30th this fall, available in both English and Spanish. It was publicized through direct emails, a press release, industry newsletters, and partner distribution channels. The URL was also available on Travel Oregon's industry website. We received a total of 1,245 responses, with the most responses coming from the Oregon coast, followed by the Portland region and the Willamette Valley. And before we get into results, I wanted to put the survey timing into a little bit of context. So the blue line represents a moving average of daily new cases of COVID-19 in Oregon. And you can see the green band there is when the survey was fielded. So at that point, cases were on the rise and they were about even with their summer peak, but they hadn't yet begun to shoot up heading into fall and winter. So that's worth bearing in mind, especially as it relates to COVID specific questions. And of course, just prior to that, 2 waves of devastating wildfires and then social unrest following the killing of George Floyd at the end of May. So we built on a foundation of prior stakeholder engagement surveys, but we did alter the survey considerably to address these events. We asked respondents to broadly characterize the impacts of both COVID-19 and wildfires on their organization or business's revenue or funding. And in both categories, small shares, 7% and 6% reported positive impacts. 6% reported little to no impact from COVID-19 relative to 35% that reported little to no impact from wildfires. And then the greatest shares, nearly 9 in 10, reported negative impacts due to COVID, and 59% reported negative impacts due to wildfires. So of these respondents, we have 2 further breakdowns, the severity of the impacts. So 62% characterized those impacts as significant from COVID-19 relative to 29% from wildfires. And then 42% of those that experienced negative impacts said those impacts were worsening due to COVID-19, and 21% are experiencing worsening impacts due to wildfires. So taken together, the impacts from COVID-19 are more extensive, more severe, and more likely to be worsening relative to impacts from wildfires. Here we're reviewing the results of that same question, but segmented by the sector in which the respondent primarily works. So we have the overall statewide results at the top, and then the sectors are sorted in descending order by the share that experienced negative impacts. So at the top, the farm, ranch, fishery, and agritourism sector has been most insulated from COVID-19 impacts, followed by land management. And then the remaining 6 sectors all exhibited high levels of negative impacts, roughly 9 in 10 respondents indicating some or significant negative impacts due to COVID-19. Now viewing those same results by region, the region in which the respondent primarily lives or works. Differences exist, but they aren't as stark as by sector. And clearly COVID-19 is a statewide issue, impacting 84% or more of respondents in each region negatively. At the top, the Willamette Valley has been most resilient to COVID-19 impacts, at least in our stakeholder survey, and that may be due in part to its higher share of employment from the agritourism sector. It did have a higher share reporting significant negative impacts, that darker orange. And then at the bottom, the Portland region, impacts were more widespread and severe, 67% reporting significant negative impacts to revenue or funding. We asked about layoffs. Just under half, 46% of respondents reported their business or organization had laid off, terminated, or otherwise let go of employees in 2020. 14% anticipate additional layoffs within the next 6 months. 54% do not, and then the remaining 32% are unsure about layoffs in the next 6 months, which represents uncertainty in the industry, especially heading into winter with rising cases. Now viewing those layoff questions by region, 2 regions were more likely to report they had experienced layoffs than had not in 2020. Central Oregon at 62% and Portland region at 54%, responding yes, they had experienced layoffs. Central Oregon and Portland region were also most likely to anticipate additional layoffs or terminations within the next 6 months at 18% responding yes in the Central Oregon region and 22% yes in the Portland region. And by sector, again, the data suggests that the agritourism sector is relatively insulated from COVID-19 impacts. Just 8% of respondents from that sector reporting layoffs in 2020. Land management followed at 37% reporting layoffs. And then the sectors most likely to report layoffs were lodging, 64% yes, followed by food and beverage, 61% yes. Nearly 2/3 of respondents are employed at a business or organization that receives some sort of funding. And the most common funding sources were the Paycheck Protection Program at 40% of respondents, other funding programs, and those consisted of things like the CARES Act, Oregon Cultural Trust, Business Oregon, and then economic injury and disaster loans followed at 18%. 7% received the Travel Oregon Emergency Grant. Just 4% of respondents applied for but did not receive funding. And then just over 1/3 neither applied for nor received additional funding. The survey asked, how would you feel if you saw an advertisement today promoting your community to visitors? And this was intended to broadly gauge the willingness of stakeholders to promote and welcome visitors to their communities. So on a 5-point scale from 1, not at all concerned, my community would benefit from visitors, to 5, very concerned, my community should not be welcoming visitors, the average rating was 2.4, skewed more towards the not concerned side of the spectrum. 55% responded a 1 or a 2, relative to 24% that responded 4 or 5. So to me, this suggests an industry that is eager to get back to promoting their destinations or attractions, although there is still this component, about 1/4 of respondents that express concern. Now viewing those responses by region, the Oregon coast expressing the most concern about welcoming visitors, followed by Central Oregon. And then respondents in Southern Oregon were most eager to welcome visitors and express the least amount of concern. 51% responded 1, not at all concerned in Central Oregon. And by sector, land management was most reluctant about welcoming visitors, while the lodging sector expressed the least amount of concern with welcoming visitors. And lodging was also the sector most impacted by layoffs in 2020 by our data. We asked a follow-up open-ended question to this that was simply, why do you feel that way? And as a general note about this year's stakeholder survey, we lean more heavily on open-ended comments. And this has resulted in a really rich, robust data set of thoughtful comments from thousands of Oregon tourism stakeholders. And this is a valuable resource, especially for communications and marketing, the importance of which we'll come to in just a minute. But those concerned about welcoming visitors on the left, they primarily cited the economic necessity of tourism to their local economies and expressed a desire to remain open for business. The neutral respondents in the center tended to weigh the economic benefits of tourism against potential risk of increased COVID-19 cases. In the words of one respondent, I recognize that so much of our local economy is dependent on tourism, but with relatively few COVID cases here currently, it feels like a huge risk to encourage visitors at this time. And then those concerned about welcoming visitors primarily cited concerns related to COVID-19 and case increases, although some did note over tourism concerns independent of the virus. In order to more fully understand concerns related to welcoming visitors, the survey asked stakeholders to rate a series of concerns, and then from that list, identify their top 2 greatest concerns, which is what's presented here. So the percent responding greatest concern is in the darker blue, and the percent responding second greatest concern is in the lighter blue. I've highlighted the top 2 here: diminished visitor experience of your destination due to facility or amenity closures, fewer frontline workers. And then in second, a lack of visitation due to decrease in travel demand. So issues related to visitor experience and lack of visitation are of greater concern to stakeholders, at least in October when the survey was fielded, relative to some of the more safety related concerns further down the list. Differences here existed by region. Negative resident sentiment towards visitors and overburdened public resources were top concerns on the Oregon coast. And then, not surprisingly, heightened political tensions and heightened racial tensions were relatively higher priorities in the Portland region. I wanted to highlight 2 more: negative resident sentiment towards visitors in third at 21% of respondents, and then overburdened public resources in fourth, also about 21%. So now we move away from understanding impacts and concerns and more into the industry's response and Travel Oregon's response. So the survey asked which resources or programs would best assist your business or organization in resiliency, recovery, and reopening, and by a large margin, help advocating for effective policies and funding to support tourism businesses and organizations was the most cited resource. And that was followed by tools and trainings to improve business communications and marketing. A similar question asked about resources or programs that would best assist communities as opposed to businesses. And here, 2 clear priorities. Number 1, support developing and bolstering visitor experiences that are COVID appropriate and enhance local livability. And then in second, communication tools and message frameworks to convey safe visitor behavior in towns and businesses. So from both the business and community perspective, we see communication tools among the top programs. Planning and management. Prior stakeholder surveys asked respondents to prioritize tactics for the following biennium. And this year, recognizing that short-term priorities likely differ in light of COVID-19 in particular, we asked them to identify their top priorities for immediate recovery the next 6 to 12 months, and then longer-term tourism planning the next 2 to 5 years. In the near term, on the left-hand side, 2 clear priorities: grants and funding resources, cited by 59% of respondents among their top 3 priorities, and then COVID-friendly visitor experience development in second. And I'll highlight a couple of these. Grants and funding resources, clearly a top short-term priority, less of a long-term priority, but still among the top 3. Marketing and promotion should be considered a top longer-term priority. It's of less importance in the near term. And then tourism-related infrastructure, cited by 33% of respondents for immediate recovery, moves up into second in terms of longer-term tourism planning priorities, cited by over half of respondents as among their top 3 priorities. We asked a more detailed question probing planning and management issues. We asked respondents to rate each of these issues, and then from that list, identify their top 2 highest priorities, which is what's presented here. At the top, managing tourism impacts in order to preserve local assets, natural and cultural, and livability. In second, identifying and fostering partnerships to address economic resiliency and reopening and implement solutions to drive recovery. And then in third, building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive tourism economy. And one thing I want to highlight about this figure is these 3, in terms of the percent responding top priority, are all roughly about 16%. And this third one here leads into a block of questions that we asked specifically related to DEI. Do you think the Oregon tourism industry should play a role in advancing social and racial justice? 54% yes, 22% no, 23% unsure. Viewed by age, we see younger stakeholders, those 25 to 34, most likely to think the tourism industry should play a role in advancing social and racial justice at 80% responding yes. That share decreases to 57% in this next age cohort, and then kind of stabilizes around roughly half for these older respondents. And based on the answer to that question, we asked one of two open-ended questions. If they said yes, we asked, how do you see Oregon's tourism industry playing a role in advancing social and racial justice? Inclusive marketing, more education and training opportunities, and more diverse representation in the workforce were the most cited roles that respondents see the industry playing. If they responded no or unsure, we asked, do you have any comments on your response to the prior question? And common themes here included the belief that this is a political issue and it should not concern the industry or Travel Oregon. Another common sentiment expressed was that there's just simply nothing the industry could do to help the situation. And there's a couple representative comments here. In the interest of time, I won't read them, but we do have all open-ended comments available under separate cover. Finally, we have a series of statements that we asked respondents to rate on a 1 to 5 scale, from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. The one at the top here, sorted in descending order by the average, is I'm satisfied with my experience working with Travel Oregon. Just 8% of respondents disagreed with that statement. That was followed by I'm satisfied with my experience working with my regional destination management organization, about 12% disagreeing. So strong satisfaction ratings for both Travel Oregon and the RDMOs. These are very consistent with what we observed in the last stakeholder survey in 2018. Also strong levels of engagement with Travel Oregon and RDMOs, and a strong understanding of how RDMOs and Travel Oregon work together. And lastly, just briefly, I wanted to highlight 2 additional resources that we have available in addition to the written reports. These are online dashboards, and one lets users explore all of the open-ended feedback that we received from the survey. The second allows people to view all the quantitative results of the survey. And we asked a series of demographic questions this year as well. So these online dashboards will let you segment the results of the survey by any of those demographic variables, and hopefully just make the data more transparent and allow people to explore the data a little bit more and answer questions they might have that weren't addressed in the written reporting. So with that, I think now we have a little time for questions, I believe.
We do. Colin, thank you so much for the presentation. Harry, thank you for your leadership of our Regional Cooperative Tourism Program overall. Appreciate this and appreciate the thoughtful report out. As was mentioned, you know, this is foundational work for the Travel Oregon team, and of course working with the Tourism Commission as we look ahead to our strategic planning work for really looking out over a kind of a 4-year planning horizon and a strategic vision for our work, as well as the efforts that we'll undertake in building our biennial plan and budget. What you see here in front of you is a timeline that we're working under right now. You see where the stakeholder survey that Colin just reviewed kind of lines up with that. And like I said, it's really the foundation from which we then launch a lot of our work going forward. We've We also just recently closed the RFP for a strategic planning and organizational design firm. We're undertaking the review of those RFPs this week, and the review committee will be meeting later this week to keep that work moving forward. Much of the balance of that should not look too familiar too unfamiliar rather to the members of the commission in terms of the next meeting in February, the Tourism Commission, the next Tourism Commission meeting that we'll have in February is when we'll look at adopting a revenue forecast for the next 2 years. We'll hold our public comment period on the draft plan and budget later in the spring, and then formally adopt the plan and budget at our June meeting, which, you know, since we're talking a little bit about hope, may turn out to be a meeting where we're actually able to gather together in person, and we will see how that lays out and how the advancements with the rollout of the vaccine progress for all of us. So just wanted to give you that high level perspective of our planning timeline overall. And with that, commissioners, I will ask if any of you have any questions for Harry or for Colin regarding what you just heard from the stakeholder survey.
I have one question, and maybe, I guess, Harry, as far as the respondents go, there was 1,245 respondents. How did this compare as in relation to other years?
Well, it was definitely down. I believe we had around 1,500 last go round for the survey process that was initiated in 2018. So I think that's entirely reasonable that responses were down given the timeline that Colin also displayed at the start of the presentation. You know, there was a lot going on in the world. There is a lot going on in the world. And we're just super thankful that people took the time, energy, and effort to respond to the survey. It's not a short survey. It takes about 20 minutes to complete. And, you know, with all the open-ended responses that for questions that, you know, we will find extremely valuable in terms of like the response and guidance provided via those answers is invaluable to us. So yeah, super big thanks to the industry for taking time to respond thoughtfully.
Great, thanks.
I guess along the same line as Nigel's question, I guess some of the regions surprise me on how little the participation is from some of those larger regions.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, I think, to get this out there in terms of being able to get it out in front of people, ensure that they are prioritizing the time to respond. But in terms of, you know, tourism workforce versus response, there is, you know, some areas where, or some regions where you think there would be potentially more respondents. Absolutely.
I think that's something we should probably brainstorm on, you know, how do we increase our participation? Because I just feel like it's such an important survey to have, you know, I think that's, I mean, yes, there's a lot going on, but it's just a small number of participants.
I agree completely. I would like to see a much higher confidence interval from tourism workforce compared to respondents. To that extent, we did get it out, you know, via extensive amount of industry e-newsletters, featured on websites, social postings, and then our regional destination management organization partners did the same as well. So definitely all ears in terms of like how to get it out further for the next go round. But yeah, more responses is ultimately more valuable. So however we can do that, definitely all ears.
And I'd just add one potential reason for that was that we were competing with the election. The survey was fielded in October. So I think people may have been sort of saturated with research by that point. from a data standpoint, I think the quality of responses is more important than the quantity of responses. And from that standpoint, you see it especially in a lot of the open-ended comments. I think people took time to really provide thoughtful feedback. And I think while responses may not have been what they were in the prior version in 2018, we got good quality data this year.
I'll also just mention that, there was definitely a contraction within the industry as well. So the workforce itself is smaller for responses.
Commissioners, other questions for Carrie or Colin?
Yeah, I have a couple more questions.
Please.
The last segment about Travel Oregon's engagement, I mean, granted, there's a lot of favorable, but that neutral percentage is a little concerning for me. I just feel like, what can we do to sway or, move that in the positive direction? I was surprised to see so many people neutral when it comes to the engagement of Travel Oregon.
Yeah, in terms of past surveys, I don't have the past survey directly in front. Colin, I don't know if you have the memory at hand, but we are able to track performance over time, and I think looking at the 2018 survey, I think that aggregate number, that 3.8 number, is right around what it was in the past. So I definitely think there is room for improvement, but I think it is tracking at the same levels.
And then my last thing that caught my attention was the advertising and, not concerned in welcoming visitors. And to me, what I've learned a lot is, people are going to travel no matter what, at least a segment of people. And we've seen that in Southern Oregon, but I feel like I'm more concerned about the future. I feel like, yes, we've held back in, marketing campaigns and advertising. And I feel like we could have done marketing not to invite people to the state, but plan for the future. And that could be, when, restrictions aren't in place, but plant those seeds so that, people are thinking about Oregon. And I feel like we, have held back too much. I've been surprised how many of our bordering states I've seen ads and, campaigns promoting their states. And I'm concerned that we've dropped the ball and not doing anything.
And not to interrupt on, but I think that when Katie and Kevin have an opportunity in a presentation here in a few minutes, there'll be some opportunity to discuss that and address directly those concerns.
Thank you.
And Don, if I may, regarding the earlier question about engagement, I think we can always look to do better. I like your idea of brainstorming ways that we can move, look at that block that is neutral. Admittedly, this is a survey that wasn't directly going to business owners or directors of sales, people that we would typically be engaged with. This went out to the industry workforce. And so, for example, you may be engaged with us, your director of sales may be engaged with us, your front desk manager may not, and your front desk manager may have taken the survey and taken a position of neutrality on their engagement. They really didn't have anything to weigh that on. So this was a broader industry workforce. It wasn't only owners or managers, it was also that broader industry workforce that would be less likely to be engaged directly with us. So it is something to do a deeper dive on. And Colin mentioned that we can look at some of the crosstab work and see if we can pull out where we see the owners and managers and such, the people that we would normally would likely be more engaged with, and see if that level of neutrality still holds.
Great, thank you.
One additional point I forgot to mention, this marked the first year that we distributed the survey in Spanish language as well. So we did that in hopes of really attracting a more diverse audience for respondents. Responses weren't incredibly high in Spanish, but it will be a focal point for us to get this out to a broader audience in the future.
Any other questions for Harry or for Colin? All right, Colin, thank you again. Great work. Appreciate the work that Driftline did for us. And Harry, thank you again for shepherding this work along. I also want to give a shout out to Stodge Olson on our team, who oversees all of our strategic planning work, project managing that, and really taking the lead not only on with the stakeholder survey, but the timeline that I put up earlier and the RFP process that we're undertaking and such. And Stodge is not presenting to us today, but is certainly worthy of the shout out because of her amazing work moving this entire process along. And again, Commissioners, you know the amount of thought and effort that we put into our strategic planning for the future biennium. So again, Harry, Colin, thank you so much. Commissioners, we had normally intended to do a break at this point, but we are running a little bit ahead, and I would like to continue on and do an additional presentation before we actually take a break. So we will move ahead in the agenda, and our next update is going to be on the 2021 legislative session, and I'm going to ask our Director of Public Affairs and Industry Communications to join us at this time. So Sarah Morrissey, welcome to the Tourism Commission meeting.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. And we have a presentation for you this morning. I'm Sarah Morrissey, as Todd introduced, the Director of Public Affairs and Industry Communications, and I'm going to be providing you with an overview of the federal and state updates that have occurred since we last met in October. So we will start on the federal side. So really want to focus on what right now is being discussed in Congress. So U.S. Travel has really been working hard to communicate the needs of the COVID Relief Now coalition. Travel Oregon is a member of that coalition. And this past Wednesday, a bipartisan group introduced the Emergency COVID Relief Act of 2020, which is a $908 billion package and includes many of the provisions that U.S. Travel was hoping to secure. So some of the things included in the act are $300 billion for small businesses, including the Paycheck Protection Program and economic insurance disaster loans, approximately $160 billion in funding for state, local, and tribal governments, which is similar to the Coronavirus Relief Fund under the CARES Act. Funding for airports, including set-asides for airport concessionaires, $2.5 billion for vaccine distribution by the CDC, and $10 billion for testing and contact tracing. The House is demanding a COVID-19 relief package, such as the one that I've just gone over, and they really want that before Christmas. However, Senate Majority Leader McConnell has stated that Republicans are unlikely to support the proposal. He specifically is calling it a bailout for states. And I think what's really important here to understand is that not only is this a relief program, but multiple programs that I haven't covered in this are expected to expire at the end of the year if no relief package is passed, including the use of CRF funds, eviction moratoriums, and unemployment assistance, and more. So negotiations are extending into this week, and U.S. Travel continues to engage with Congress and is urging immediate action in passing a relief bill. We really are hopeful, and we will continue to engage with the Oregon delegation to encourage a passage such as the one we've described. For outdoor recreation, I just wanted to give a quick update on a few bills at the federal level. So the Great American Outdoors Act, this is a bill that passed earlier this year and provides $9.5 billion over 5 years to address deferred maintenance and other infrastructure projects on federal lands. It also fully funds the Land and Water Conservation program. And the Forest Service expects about $285 million to be allocated in fiscal 21, continuing through fiscal 25. 65% of the funds will be used on non-transportation projects, including recreation facilities, visitor centers, dams, and others. And no more than $100 million can be used for transportation projects, including paved and unpaved roads, bridges, tunnels, paved parking areas, and trails. In addition, the bill provides $900 million annually to the USDA and Department of Interior through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which will improve access to public lands and further strengthen the recreation economy based on national forests and grasslands. Travel Oregon is working with the U.S. Forest Service on providing feedback on the proposed Oregon projects, and we're also working closely with our Forest Service partners to engage in providing feedback with external partners. So setting up systems in which we can make sure that the word gets out to get that feedback back to the U.S. Forest Service on future project lists. In early 2021, we're also expecting 2 other federal bills that may impact outdoor recreation. The first is Congressman Blumenauer's Care for Mount Hood and Gorge Act. This directs the Forest Service to prioritize sustainable and equitable outdoor recreation, conservation, and wildfire management. And it also has a strong portion on modernized transportation and transit systems for Mount Hood and the Gorge. And Senator Wyden is also discussing releasing a bill in the near future to increase the number of miles of wild and scenic rivers in Oregon. So that's what's happening at the federal level. And now I'll turn it over to the state. So I thought I'd just start really quickly by highlighting some of the federal CARES Act money that was passed in March and that Oregon received. Approximately $1.4 billion went to the state, and these funds have gone to cities, counties, and have been allocated to specific programs through the state's emergency board. Below is an overview of a few ways in which these funds have been allocated that may impact the tourism industry. So to start off, $50 million for arts and cultural organizations. So the Oregon Cultural Trust allocated approximately $26 million through a grant process to 621 cultural organizations across Oregon. And then the remaining balance, about $24 million, went directly to individual organizations like the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and Oregon Symphony. Business Oregon stood up multiple small business emergency grant programs. Within the Coronavirus Relief Fund, they had grants of $5 million, $16 million, and $20 million disbursements. Business Oregon also provided $7.5 million in state-funded grant programs to small businesses statewide, so a total of approximately $50 million through their programs. Most recently, $55 million went out to counties, and that had a request that the funds be prioritized for businesses within the hospitality industry. So the allocation is approximately $500,000 per county, with the remaining balance going towards counties on a per capita basis. And finally, $65 million for Project Turnkey. And so that was really over a series of meetings in October and November. The Oregon Joint Legislative Emergency Board approved a total of $65 million for this project. And it has the purpose of acquiring motels and hotels for use as non-congregate shelters for people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. So there's 2 funds in this program. One's approximately $30 million, and that'll be awarded to counties and tribal communities that were impacted by the 2020 wildfires. And the other is a $35 million fund for the remaining 28 counties in the state. The Oregon Community Foundation is administering both funds through an application and selection process with guidance from an advisory committee of state, local, and community stakeholders. And special session was just announced this morning. So Governor Brown announced it that it's going to be taking place on Monday, December 21st. The session is going to be taking place for 1 day. And what Governor Brown would like to see in that session is approximately $800 million in relief for those impacted by wildfires in the pandemic. And the session's most likely to focus on the following 4 bills. One that would provide about $200 million in relief for landlords and tenants. Another that is sponsored by Representative Noce out of Southeast and Northeast Portland, and it's being called the Restaurant Bill, and includes to-go cocktails and third-party delivery platform commission caps. A bill that would protect schools from coronavirus-related lawsuits. And finally, a bill to transfer $600 million to the state's emergency fund that would then go out through the emergency board. Travel Oregon is glad to hear that a special session has been announced to provide state, local, COVID relief, as well as the fact that the restaurant bill is included in the agenda. We know our partners at Orla and the Independent Restaurants Coalition has really hoped that this bill was included. So we're hopeful that it can be passed in this next week to support those in our industry. Other updates from the state level, first on the legislation or the legislative session. We're about a month out before a full session kicks off in January. What will session look like in 2021? That's really a question right now. There's some version of virtual and possibly some in the building work. Right now, it's not expected that general public will be able to enter the building, but there may be times in which the legislature actually goes in for votes. Right now, what we're hearing is that there may be committee hearings that take place virtually. That would be kind of the start of the session. So public hearings would happen virtually via Zoom or other platforms. And then when there's a stack of bills that are ready to progress through the chambers, it's likely that legislators would come in at that point in time, vote, and then go back to the virtual process. There's still a lot of debate about what this session could look like. Some of the potential bills that we are tracking that may be discussed, one would be a legislative concept that looks at restructuring the way in which local transient lodging taxes could be utilized. This would grandfather the existing uses and introduce a new formula that would broaden its use, such as including search and rescue services. Orla is opposing this legislation. If the special session happens and the restaurant bill is not included next Monday, it is likely to be included in the regular session. And so that is another one that would be moving forward if it doesn't pass next week. And then we've talked about this before, but really the state's transient lodging tax rate is not expected to be discussed at this session. In terms of testimony, again, like I've mentioned, people are not expected to physically be in the building, especially the general public. Right now, there's a lot of discussion of how to provide for citizens and interested parties to submit testimony. How do you provide that platform? And so right now, it's really important to establish relationships before session begins because everything is virtual. So we are working on putting together messaging and talking points, as well as connecting with the new legislators that were recently elected. On Governor Brown's budget, she released her 21 to 23 recommended biennial budget on December 1st. It really focuses on the key challenges facing Oregonians, like the public health and economic impacts of the pandemic, recovery from the wildfires, and taking steps to end systemic racism and address racial disparities in Oregon. She spoke specifically to how the budget is centered in prioritizing Black, Indigenous people of color and their communities, and emphasized the need to prioritize people of color in all aspects of public service. As an agency, I know we're committed to this work and that we align strongly with the state approach. The budget also included $10 million for the World Athletic Championship Oregon 22 in Business Oregon's agency budget, and it also included funds for the state's Office of Outdoor Recreation. The funds are proposed for both the director's position as well as additional staff person, which is great news as we've seen outdoor recreation continue to be critical for Oregon, both in rebuilding outdoor recreation areas post-wildfire, as well as creating experiences and opportunities for outdoor recreation access through the pandemic. People are looking for outdoor spaces and outdoor recreation opportunities as we enter 2021. Oregon's primary revenue sources are expected to grow approximately about 5% during that 21 to 23 budget period. The losses of jobs and business income due to the recession have yet to completely flow through to tax collection. And that growth is really modest from a historical perspective and not sufficient to keep up with the rising cost of providing public service. So the state budget will be tight and programs and services are going to continue to be cut in multiple agencies. Her budget also illuminated that affordable housing will continue to be a focus moving forward. In areas where the tourism industry is strong, there are times in which affordable housing is not available for the local tourism workforce. And we need to continue determining how the industry can participate in the discussion around affordable housing within our lane. In terms of communication, our budget and programming was communicated to legislators through the Legislative Fiscal Office's semi-independent biennial report, as well as through staff, including myself and Jamie Eder. Part of our work is really building relationships so we can ensure that legislators and their staff understand our programming and fully appreciate the value of our work. And so with this virtual nature of the session, an additional layer of vulnerability is added, and we have to work twice as hard to make sure those relationships are in place before session starts. The way in which the pandemic has hit our economy has truly exposed the value of small businesses across Oregon, and our role in supporting Oregon businesses and communities is key to ensuring local communities can build and recover statewide. So we're really working, and at the beginning of this call, Todd spoke to the outcomes that we're focused on over the next 6 months. We'll continue to use this messaging to communicate our work and programming to legislators and other elected officials over the next few months. In terms of communication with the commission, we are committing to providing you all with weekly legislative updates via email during session. So you'll be receiving those most likely from Todd or Sarah Watson. And now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jamie Eater, to provide you with an update on our Public Affairs Regional Destination Management Organization program that we recently completed. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Sarah. Good morning, commissioners. On November 5th, the Industry Communications Public Affairs team and Anna Richter-Taylor, who is our public affairs contractor, kicked off a series of meetings with leaders from each RDMO and one subregion for a total of 8 meetings. Alana Hewson joined most of the meetings as well to listen in and represent from a DMO advocacy standpoint. These meetings were convened to get insight on the level of engagement our regional partners currently have with state legislators and elected officials, and to help us better serve them as we continue to champion the value of tourism in Salem and around the state. At the conclusion of these meetings, perhaps the biggest learning is how different each region is. Obviously, there's mountains in one region and coastline in another region, but every RDMO is also set up very differently. So some are 501c6s, others are county entities, and this translates to a very different need as far as pain points, strengths in the public affairs space. This will also be one of our greatest challenges as we devise a plan moving forward from these meetings. There's just no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to cultivating relationships with elected officials. To speak a bit more on key findings, in some of the regions, relationships are very strong with legislators, but at a county or city level, conveying the value of tourism on the local economy can be really challenging. But in other regions, county commissioners sit on the board of the RDMO and they're fully supportive of the work. In many regions, we heard that when we speak of the tourism economy as an industry, it conjures images of big business hotels and restaurant chains, rather than the small local businesses that our industry comprises. The billion-dollar economic impact numbers we tout are ambiguous, and they're often not believed by elected officials. One region gave us an example that they had Dean Runyon himself presenting the economic impact numbers to a city council meeting, and they still did not believe the economic impact numbers. Another challenge we identified is that districts with where an elected official represents obviously do not perfectly align with our state's tourism regions, which can make our regional partners weary when they're trying to funnel information or requests up to elected officials. What is a critical need for, say, Southern Oregon might not be what is in the best interest of Central Oregon, though they share an elected representative. We're super excited to dive in as a team and consider the best course of action based on our findings. These meetings were really just the beginning of what will be ongoing conversations. Our first step will be sharing the findings with the larger group at an upcoming weekly RDMO call. From there, we've discussed everything from convening statewide public affairs, like a committee to align efforts, to producing one-pagers for our regions to share with officials, to increasing our own team's storytelling efforts, just to really help put a face to the tourism industry. I think the one thing that's most clear is that we need to work on building a culture of collectivism, just to really help businesses see themselves as part of the industry so that they're more likely to advocate for themselves. One of the best or the most effective ways that the best way to reach a legislator is to hear directly from constituents. So Travel Oregon can definitely be more active in this space. COVID has shown us what's at stake when the tourism industry suffers. We can use what we've learned through this pandemic to identify ways to help even the smallest tourism businesses as we look toward economic recovery and long-term resiliency and prepare for the potential of future threats to the industry. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to sharing more updates in this space as we have them for you. And with that, I will just ask if you have any questions for me or Sarah.
I have a question. I guess I'm surprised that the state transient lodging tax is not being planned to be discussed, given how hard hit the hospitality industry has been. Can any of you give me some insight on that, and perhaps when we might begin discussing that?
Yeah, hi, Commissioner DeNovo. So in speaking, we tried to move that in both the special sessions that happened in the summer as well as last year. Right now, because there are so many competing interests for funding for affordable housing and for other types of uses, the challenge is that we don't have a clear sponsor for a bill around a transient lodging tax increase, but there has been interest instead of increasing it, but then attaching the use to affordable housing or other efforts that would be outside of the transient lodging kind of use that we have to date. So the challenge, especially because everything is virtual, there's not a lot of transparency on those discussions at the leadership level. And so there is hesitation because we don't have a clear path on how it would move forward, who the champion would be, and then if there is a way to move it forward, if in this virtual setting, there's a higher likelihood that it could get attached to other uses versus the standard transient lodging tax use that it is to date. So I think part of it is that we don't have kind of a clear path forward, but also there's a lot of hesitation in entering into bills like this because of the virtual nature of session this year, because there's just so much uncertainty at play. I do think it is on the table to discuss at future sessions that would be taking a more traditional route, but that's where we are today.
Okay,
If that's helpful.
thank you very much, Sarah.
Sure.
I just want to say I feel fortunate to have you, Sarah, in charge of that, because we would have been driving ahead looking for those additional dollars, and they would have been attached and gone before we received them for what we view as important work. And then Todd, Sarah, what is the expectation on Oregon 2021-22 contributions, either in marketing or in funds from Travel Oregon? Has that shifted at all?
I'm happy to answer that, Sarah. Greg, commissioners, our commitment to Oregon 22 is as it has always been, and that's we committed $20 million in support of Oregon 22. $10 million came from our competitive grant program, and $10 million came from our program budget. So we are still on track to fulfill that commitment to Oregon 22, and nothing has changed in terms of Travel Oregon's commitment to this event and to seeing to its success.
Sarah, any recommendations as it relates to the U.S. Travel Coalition grassroots activities that anybody either in attendance or watching today could undertake?
I mean, I think from the Oregon delegation perspective, the Oregon representatives are really in support of COVID relief. And I think they've heard both from Travel Oregon as well as partners across the state and businesses across the state. So I would just continue to advocate for relief for the industry. I reach out pretty frequently to representatives, both on the Senate and the House side, just to provide them with updated numbers about how the industry is being impacted in Oregon. That information is really helpful for representatives. So I would say if you have a business profile you can share, I'm happy to pass it along or happy to incorporate it in the updates that we provide. But the more information those representatives can have in Washington about what's happening on the ground in Oregon, the stronger their messaging can be to leadership in DC.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Sarah and Jamie? All right. Well, thank you both for the update. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
I'm
right.
crossing my
Nice to
fingers
see you.
that I can have a margarita at home from my favorite bar in the future.
Absolutely. All right. Commissioners, I'd like to propose that we take a break at this time, and why don't we reconvene? I showed 10:24. Why don't we excuse me, 10:19 rather. Why don't we reconvene at 10:25? Okay, 5-6 minutes, and we'll start back up at 10:25. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. I have the great pleasure right now to turn this next presentation over to Greg Eckhart, who's our Director of Global Sales. You know, I find this update especially timely because I know in the midst of the pandemic and such as we've been discussing, there's you know, we've been talking about visitation, we've been talking about inspiration, we've been talking about what are we doing to, you know, lay that groundwork and that foundation. And one of those places you may have some questions as members of the commission is, what about international? What's happening in the international space? And what I will tell you is that Travel Oregon's global sales team has been nothing but diligent in this space, given the shift to the virtual environment that we're now living within, but still having that opportunity to inspire, to help with planning, to really continue to invest in these long-term relationships that have been the foundation of our work with international tour operators, travel agents, and the media over the years. So it's now my great pleasure to turn the presentation over to Greg Eckhart, Director of Global Sales for Travel Oregon. Greg?
Thanks, Todd. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, everyone. Happy holidays. Todd said it. He sort of took the words out of my mouth. I'll spend a lot of time today talking about the mechanization of global sales work during the pandemic, but today's discussion is really more about relationships, partnerships, and connections as much as it is about sales and business development opportunities for Oregon. So I'll go ahead and jump into that. Let's see here. So it's through in-person events like this past IPW pictured here that Travel Oregon and so many of our partners kind of initially forged those vital networks, which have remained intact and strong to the extent possible given the pandemic's impact. We're going to continue to rely on those connection points to drive incremental travel demand among the travel trade and international media. We're eager to get back to doing business this way again, just like Sarah's eager to get back to having those margaritas that she can pick up curbside. However, in the meantime, I'm excited to share how we continue to inspire and illuminate our global network of clients and media. Some of the information we'll expand on here is briefed out in the Travel Oregon Strategic Plan Progress Report, which you as commissioners have already received. So here are the broad themes of today's presentation. We'll talk about what's the same, what some of you may be familiar with, and including a bit of background, what Travel Oregon has been doing to remain relationship sales focused and stay connected during this time. We'll talk about how we and our partners in Oregon and elsewhere have adapted to the virtual present. And finally, kind of what global sales path to the future looks like, given the fluid situational nature of the pandemic. Before we start, though, I'm going to share a quote from a recent story featured on NPR, National Public Radio. U.S. economists estimate that millions of American savings have reached approximately $2 trillion, or roughly 10% of the U.S. economy. We like to know and feel that that savings is going to be spooled up for those life-changing vacations. Demand is surging in the UK as well, thanks to positive news related to the COVID-19 vaccine, with the global OTA, or online travel agency, Skyscanner, reporting that UK searches for travel next spring and summer are up 40% week on week. That's from last week. The tour operator Trail Finders, also a UK-based operator, is reporting record booking and inquiry volumes for the Canary Islands at the moment their COVID-19 travel restrictions were relaxed. So what is global sales doing to capture a share of this excitement and inspiration? We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. As I mentioned, we continue to cultivate those existing networks within our traditional B2B marketplaces, but we're also adapting our work with existing networks and finding new business development opportunities in other verticals. The next few slides will dive into what's really remained constant, again, though still very fluid, almost up to the day. Pictured here is a visual representation of maintaining consistent client-partner relationships and global business development networks during the pandemic. It's been one hell of a ride, tracking folks down and really maintaining those connections and relationships. Seriously though, we do remain dedicated to maintaining those. We value every opportunity to interact with our partners and clients around the world. And much like this cowboy, we value those just like a rodeo, or the cowboy would with a rodeo clown, that's going to save him when he's tossed to that turf in Pendleton. Like him, we're relying on those partnerships now more than ever, and we remain connected to keep Oregon top of mind. We hope to capture new market share from a vertical previously underutilized. We're refining our focus to include US-based travel advisors and agents, and we're committed to providing unique experiences to their typically internationally traveling customers. It's interesting to note, however, any hard data related to this shift is difficult to discern, as it's just too soon to track any trends. Anecdotally, agents and advisors have stated that they're moving to domestic and outdoor adventure or rural focused bookings because their clients are demanding it. As leisure travel drives tourism's recovery, tapping into this vertical will provide access to a unique market segment, diversifying Travel Oregon's portfolio of business. Really, to put it simply, it's just another channel to provide revenue and incremental business, contributing to a resilient recovery for Oregon's tourism businesses and the state's overall economic health. While many of these inspirational focused B2B marketplaces have changed, many aspects of them have also stayed the same. We continue to do one-on-one appointments with travel trade buyers and media. We provide training and webinars virtually for agents. And Brand USA's wildly popular Virtual Travel Week Europe has been adapted for North America as well, with the addition of World Travel Week Canada, which Travel Oregon is slated to attend, and another World Travel Week coming up later in 2021, based in Mexico, focusing on those customers. Despite being virtual, these events continue to serve the purpose of cultivating and maintaining critical business relationships, developing new ones, and in some cases, really just being there to talk about what's happened to the travel and tourism industry and discuss bright spots, whether those are personal or professional, just continuing to maintain those relationships. So the virtual present, we've all seen it, we're all experiencing it, but it is really just what it is. We're virtually connecting to our clients to capture incremental market share when the time is right. Remembering that NPR quote from earlier in my presentation, demand is strong, and positioning Oregon to, to address this demand at a B2B level is a critical part of Oregon's recovery. So let's look in a bit on the present. In October of 2020, Travel Oregon and 6 RDMO partners participated in the first ever 2020 Travel Age West Western States Expo, designed to capture US-based travel agents and advisors' need for domestic and in particular outdoor and rural focused destination information. These advisors are eager to learn more about their own country as their clients are asking for it, and new clients are coming their way for the same as they become increasingly aware of the security and assistance a travel agent or travel advisor can provide during crisis situations. Advisors are also in critical need of up-to-date information, suggestions, and ideas while their clients are in that crucial inspirational phase of trip planning. As you can see, the show organizers with North Star Media and Travel Age West developed a robust format reminiscent of in-person events. Our partners had the opportunity to include additional supplier partners in their booths, and a few of them took advantage of that benefit, adding partners like Wanderlust Tours in Central Oregon as delegates and providing attending advisors and partners with even more business development opportunities. RDMO partners were also included in a webinar titled Master the West, which served as an informative yet functional opportunity to drive traffic to each region's and Travel Oregon's booths for follow-up discussion on key points included in the short 12-minute inspirational pitch. So I'm going to step into the booth right now, although it is not live. Going deeper into the trade show experience, you can see that partner booths looked and felt much like a real trade show. Attendees had the opportunity to chat in real time. I'll show that in a moment with Oregon partners like Katera. They could grab brochures from the Resource Center. watch video content to develop destination knowledge, and share that with their client base, which again is rapidly pivoting from long haul international adventures to closer to home domestic experiences. Advisors had, again, the ability to chat in real time with booth participants, and several conversations focused on outdoor experiences and adventures, and they continue to be having conversations ongoing through post-event follow-up by connecting suppliers and advisors. We strive to foster those connections for all of our partners, and continuing to provide market intelligence and B2B leads for future business development through this format and venue was a great way to explore new opportunities that will eventually grow into incremental business. Thanks to the virtual trade show platform, we are offered greater insight regarding travel advisor attendance and engagement with our content and virtual booths. Here are the stats related to the Oregon booth at the Travel Age West show. Stats were also provided to each RDMO for their individual booths as well. Brand USA continues to be a critical partner, offering opportunities for Oregon to connect with clients virtually across the pond, and many other US-based destinations and suppliers as well. In late October, Travel Oregon attended Brand USA's Virtual World Travel Week Europe. This innovative business-to-business trade show began in 2019 with great success, with buyers being handpicked from across Europe by Brand USA to meet with US suppliers at this invitation-only event, creating a more intimate environment for business to take place. As you see here, Brand USA created digital supplier booths that again mimic the in-person experience, complete with destination imagery, video content, itineraries, links to social media platforms, websites, and even a virtual business card bowl for exhibitors to drop their contact information for later follow-up. During the event, the global sales team met with 24 different companies from Europe and the UK, and these meetings provided key insights into market trends, sentiment, and attitudes from a client perspective. Generally, the feeling is hopeful for travel to begin again in the spring of 2021, although most operators were tentatively planning for summer of 21. In Europe and the UK, again, there's huge pent-up demand for travel to the USA. We saw that here. Clients indicated that visiting large US cities will not be the top of their initial must-see list for the United States, as they have been in the past, although tour operators have received many inquiries for Oregon and other states with wide open spaces and ample outdoor recreation opportunities. Product managers were also quite pleased to hear that Oregonians traveling statewide has been quite common, sending the message that Oregon's lodging and other tourism partners have precautions and procedures in place to welcome visitors from around the world when the time is right. This Oregon booth will remain available to clients as part of Brand USA's ongoing global marketplace through June of 2021. It will also be featured in upcoming virtual shows with other key markets. The event was as seamless as could be, with the German delegation even hosting a happy hour to provide live networking via Zoom with beers in hand, naturally. The domestic tour operator and wholesale market remains a vital conduit for our B2B work as well. And Oregon remains on the virtual bus, if you'll pardon the expression, connecting with those buyers. As in past years, Travel Oregon attended NTA's Travel Exchange in November. This annual business-to-business trade show provided the opportunity to connect with domestic travel buyers and tour operators via an Ask the Operator session, as you see photographed here, via one-on-one business appointments and other networking and programs. This year, Travel Oregon met with 22 buyers and tour operators virtually, and the appointments focused on sales and new group and FIT product development for 21 and 22. Another program that NTA offered as part of this was a virtual sales mission. You'll see our amazing partner, Janice Longlene, looping on the screen here as she brought the hospitality and community of the Coquille tribe to our NTA clients virtually during NTA's sales mission. Other participants included the Best Western Agate Beach, Lamb Hotels, and Visit Medford. The digital sales mission allowed for Travel Oregon and our partners to share the Oregon experience on location at the Portland Spirit, the Holiday Inn Express Seaside, and again, the Mill Casino, including that live activation of the Salmon Bake on the Mills campus. After the sales mission, buyer attendees were provided a suggested itinerary highlighting locations featured in the virtual sales mission. Clients have already reached out, commenting that Oregon's portion of the event was the most impactful to them, and they owe a lot of thanks to us for providing such a great itinerary and follow-up. Clearly, Travel Oregon owes a huge thanks to Janice, Lucinda DeNovo, and Amy Bailey and the entire Mill Casino team for making Oregon shine once again. As it did with Brand USA, the themeless theme carried throughout with NTA 2, including a live closing event hosted by our friends and partners at the Nashville CVB, featuring live performances with local musicians via Zoom. Investment continues across the B2B landscape, with destinations and partners inspiring buyers and driving demand among the leisure trade. So what does this immediate future look like for global sales as we continue to inspire our partners during this planning phase? Travel Oregon has had the privilege of a front row seat to an array of new opportunities out there, and we like to think that we've garnered some insight from that vantage point. There are two things we know to be true with our clients, or engaging our clients globally while in this virtual state. Video conferencing offers the opportunity for live and on-location engagements, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, we'll continue to use these platforms, and we may even continue to utilize them when we're back to hosting in-person fam trips, content development media and visits, and even at trade shows. We also know that they help keep Oregon in the inspirational funnel during this critical planning phase for these B2B clients, and there are plenty of options to reach those clients during this time, right in their living rooms in some cases. Here's a snapshot of some of the upcoming client engagement highlights. With Canadians likely being Oregon's first group of intrepid international travelers we'll welcome, we continue to monitor border reopening procedures and timelines, and we'll be ready to activate when the time is right. In the meantime, we're developing engagement strategies to inspire media and strengthen connections with the travel trade, utilizing Oregon's birthday as a rough theme for an upcoming engagement in February with Canadian media. In addition to several ongoing webinars and B2B engagements in Japan, Travel Oregon, along with partners at Delta Airlines, Visit the Tualatin Valley, and Travel Portland, will host a business development roundtable luncheon for decision makers from Japan's leading travel companies, JTB, HIS, and NTA. This venue provides Oregon the opportunity to elevate our message with influential travel buyers in a collaborative setting. We're also putting plans together for a UK and media trade happy hour that will highlight Oregon beer. Yes, we can finally get Oregon beer in the UK, Cascade Brewing to be exact, which is a fabulous one if you haven't tasted it. This will also take place close to Oregon's birthday in February 21. And in March of 2021, we're planning a live agent and B2B training engagement featuring Oregon tourism partners and makers, utilizing our relationships with the Visit USA Committee in Germany. We're also eagerly tracking progress and updates from our airline partners as they plan to resume service from Europe and Japan in the spring of 2021, with the UK service remaining on pause for the time being. We're on an ongoing basis evaluating and prospecting new business and trade opportunities with both wholesale tour operators and retail partners or travel advisors as well. Last of all, how do we continue to collaborate in these unique environments and keep driving that incremental business to Oregon? Oregon is well recognized for collaboration, and that collaboration has built trust among our partners and clients. And right now, that spirit of trust and partnership is crucial to building and maintaining existing relationships and business development networks. Travel Oregon will stretch the flexibility of these platforms, understanding that it's not one size fits all, but we do know that nimble execution is critical. Through the inspirational phase, we'll continue to realize that this is the perfect time to interact with advisors and buyers, and studies suggest that planning is almost as fulfilling as the experience yourself, and advisors and buyers are taking advantage of that craving to explore the world. Agents, providers, and operators are adapting to client shifts geared toward U.S. adventures away from long haul, and we're ready to capture that. We'll continue to concentrate less on the pitch and more on the partnership. Again, if 2020 has proven anything, it's that finding global partners are going to be critical to our success in future, and that ranges from tour operators to airlines, as you've heard me mention. We're known throughout industry networks as a place where things get done in innovative ways, and our relationships prove that. We understand that maintaining and diversifying those networks now will lead to long-term, resilient recovery opportunities via incremental and sustainable growth in the future. During the past decade, Oregon has been fortunate enough to enjoy reliable growth from our international inbound markets, contributing to our economy at a measured rate of success. And our whole team is buoyed by the fact that tourism economics recently projected Oregon's international visitation and spending will surpass 2019 figures in 2024. With Canada being aided in the near term because of our exposure to Canada and geographic proximity to Canada. Our GS team is eager to play a part in shaping the next decade of prosperity for Oregon as we look to regain market share and drive demand for Oregon for another 10 years. Thanks again for your time today, and thank you for your leadership during this pivotal moment for Oregon and our industry.
Greg, thank you very much. Boy, I tell you, no truer words were spoken than when you reference the value of investing in these long-term relationships and how those are helping buoy the recovery, and that we're able to get information to these folks that they're not just clients, they're friends, and they trust us. You've built you, Petra, the entire global sales team have built a trust and confidence in them. You spoke to the confidence that they have in Oregon's hospitality industry because they see Oregonians traveling in Oregon, and it helps impress upon them the steps that have been taken by our lodging operators and restaurants and others to ensure the health and safety of folks as they're traveling throughout the state. So nicely done, and appreciate all that you're doing and the entire team is doing to continue to nurture those relationships. And Nigel, it sounds like Cascade Brewing is throwing down the gauntlet about getting beer into the UK, buddy. So I don't know. Commissioners, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have for Greg at this time.
Yeah, I do have a question for Greg, and I know this is a little bit looking into your crystal ball, Greg. But as far as you sort of touched on international borders and reopening, what are sort of the inside timelines that you've heard, obviously, because as of right now, there is really no international travel because we simply can't, right? Also paired with the limited flights. So I guess what information are you hearing through your channels about when we could expect some lifting of restrictions there?
Sure, Nigel. The one that we're monitoring probably the closest is Canada, just because it's an immediate drive market internationally. And I think I smashed my crystal ball in June, although I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look because I made predictions back in March and April that were clearly wrong. I think a lot of us did. So honestly, with Canada, it's fluid. We've heard the needle move from March, and that's kind of where it has stopped for the time being. I keep hearing that, although we still don't know because it's changing daily, right? Overseas wise, we have received some promising news from our partners at Delta Airlines related to international air service going into and out of, from Atlanta to Heathrow, I believe, and then another one with into Rome. So some different kind of testing scenarios that will allow them to open that up a bit. But again, that is for essential travel using that Atlanta gateway with Delta Airlines. So I kind of answered your question, but I didn't. We're closely monitoring it. We have maintained part-time representation with teams in Japan, the UK, and Germany and Canada. So we have daily conversations or communication with them to discuss what that situation looks like. As I mentioned, the Tokyo flight is slated to resume in March of 21, and the Europe flights are slated to resume in spring of 21 as well. That remains stated. However, I believe it will be fluid.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Greg, it's Scott. I'm not sure how to ask this without it sounding predatory, which is not at all my intent. But and in fairness, you may have already addressed it while I was admiring your visuals, and apparently my ears and eyes aren't connected. The desirability of ours as a destination in light of the low coronavirus case counts, relatively speaking, in your communication with international operators, is there an awareness of where the United States, where locations are hotter than others in terms of virus spread?
That's the same kind of sort of the same answer that I gave Nigel. I think the Canadian market is obviously more attuned to what's occurring because like most of their population lives within 35 miles of the border, 3/4 of their population, right? So they're much more attuned to what's happening because they're receiving local news networks from across the border, things like that. I think they're more attuned and paying attention to places. However, generally what we're seeing is, and I mentioned it early, tour operators are looking away from urban experiences initially, which is completely counter to what it had been in the past. And they're looking at going into rural and outdoor focused locations almost immediately upon arrival in the United States. That's what we're seeing.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Greg, I have a question. Did you get any feedback from those that you spoke to about the riots in Portland? Was there a concern about safety from them?
Sure. We identified that there could be potential there early on. We worked with our partners at Travel Portland in advance of Go West Summit. Many of you may recall that Go West Summit was to be hosted in Portland this year in March of 2020, and it was postponed and then just went completely virtual. In advance of the virtual event, we worked with Portland to maximize our opportunity to develop some talking points, which we did. Anecdotally, we had some conversations. It was great to have those talking points in hand, but I didn't see it dramatically affecting any planning or inspirational planning for the next 2 years.
Great, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Greg? All right, Greg, thank you so much, not just for the presentation, but for the work you're doing every day. Appreciate you, my friend. Commissioners, our final presentation this morning is coming from our global marketing team, and Kevin Wright, who's our VP of Global Marketing, will lead this off and provide us with an overview of various marketing and communication approaches that we have been undertaking. So at this point, Kevin, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning, commissioners. As Todd mentioned, I'm planning to share with you today a look at where we've been with our marketing communications since the start of the pandemic and where we see our work heading. I guess before I hop in, I'll speak to Commissioner Anway's comments earlier, and I guess say I'm right there with you. Marketing the state is what we do. It's this team and this agency's DNA. So being asked to not do that in cases, in some cases, promote a message of shelter in place is really the antithesis of what we do. So we've been working with Sarah and her team, as well as Todd, and pushing the governor's office as much as we can, sharing data and finding and pushing that line as far as what we can do. But the reality is the governor's office has asked us to stop with that very specific line of messaging, the planning of future travel, asking us to pull even particular posts down. So I just want to share that out of the gate. I'll speak to that a little bit more, actually a lot more. That's kind of what I'm going to queue up as far as what we've been doing and how we've been pushing as far as we up to that line as best we can. So with that, we'll hop in. So what you're seeing here is a high-level timeline of Travel Oregon's consumer marketing and communications efforts, much of which has been developed in tandem with the governor's office. So just kind of walking you through the timeline here, the pandemic became real in late March, and by April, we launched a public safety campaign in partnership with the governor's office in Wine-Kennedy. By May, we paused our work on the Origins Tribal campaign and developed a recovery campaign designed to give Oregonians permission to travel again called Welcome Back to Oregon. In June, as cases began to spike, we worked with Wine-Kennedy to build another PSA campaign for the governor's office to promote the use of masks, and we put a hold on our recovery campaign launch. By July, the governor's office requested we pause all tours and promotion, and we pivoted our communications to be in service to 3 core tenets under the umbrella of Take Care Out There, stewardship campaign. That was our public safety, business resiliency, and stewardship of public lands. Then the Labor Day fires erupted. We repurposed all of our communication channels and content to address the devastating wildfires, including travel alerts, how to help, and stories of resiliency. As COVID cases spiked again in October, we worked with the governor's office on a third PSA to inform Oregonians about the urgent importance of limiting social gatherings during the holiday season. That campaign launched November 19th. While the PSA campaign was in development, we also worked with the governor's office and Business Oregon to launch the Give the Gift of Oregon campaign in time for the holiday shopping season. Give the Gift of Oregon was developed to inspire support for Oregon businesses during the holiday season. Some of this work was already underway as we use our channels to support Oregon businesses, and having most of our ad creative being developed in-house enabled us to quickly expand and implement this work. Content was created to highlight unique products from each region, and a landing page was developed where shoppers could browse products regionally or by niche, including Give the Gift of Future Travel, Give the Gift of Adventure, and Give the Gift of Indulgence. Since there are many small shopping promotion efforts underway throughout the state, the campaign and landing page were built as an umbrella for these efforts to live under. On the landing page, we're connecting consumers to many of these initiatives, like the Wine Board's Wine Giving Season, Orla's Oregon to Go campaign, and Built Oregon's newly launched online marketplace. And yes, the South Coast Operation Gift Card is on that page as well. As this was an umbrella effort to support partners, industry alignment is a key component. So we created a toolkit for partners showing, we had an FAQ page with key dates to rally around and specifics on how to get involved. And we provided digital assets to leverage and support the effort. We also provided partners with new imagery showing holiday shopping with people wearing masks. That campaign launched on November 18th with a press release from Governor Brown, and will run through December 31st. To support the launch, we secured statewide earned media coverage with an 8-day series on Coin featuring products from each of the regions. We launched a digital and social media buy, driving back to the campaign landing page on TravelOregon.com, and we were able to provide a $5,000 stipend to each regional partner to support the campaign. So while it's been challenging navigating the many crises in front of us, the team's done an amazing job pivoting our work, and we remain optimistic about the future as we plan for the new normal. We continue to anticipate when we'll be able to advertise again. What's the right message when we can advertise travel? What will be happening in the country and world when that day comes? How will people be feeling, and what do they need from Travel Oregon? While we can't predict the future, we can start with what we know. Our share of voice is shrinking as our neighboring destinations continue to promote tourism. Our current campaign, Take Care Out There, is responsible, but not meant to inspire travel. We have a campaign on the shelf that was created in response to a moment that is yet to come. We also know that 2020 has been a heavy year. The health crisis, economic crisis, and the illumination of racial injustice that gave way to uprisings across the world, plus a tense election year and months of isolation, has put a strain on all of us. And for Oregonians, we've endured all of that, plus wildfires and having a political spotlight on our state. Today, the narrative of Oregon, particularly Portland, is being shaped by the media. Oregon is on everyone's radar, but not for the most positive, travel-inspiring reasons. It feels like the world is pretty afraid of Portland and Oregon. This makes how we show up in the world when we do advertise again important. Our big return needs to soften the perception of Oregon, excite people to travel to Oregon, and make Oregonians proud. We're recommending a 2-phase approach that will give Oregonians permission to travel around Oregon and inspire our target audience to travel to every corner of the state. Phase 1, we're calling the permission phase. That'll be a short phase tied to a moment in time. We'll hold the recovery campaign to run the moment Oregonians can travel freely again, whether that moment is tied to a vaccine being widely available or the governor's announcement. Phase 2, we call inspiration. That'll be a longer phase that inspires travel to Oregon. We plan to reintroduce the world of Oregon slightly exaggerated with a new chapter centered on the people and the culture of Oregon. So the permission phase, as I mentioned, that'd be that's the welcome back to Oregon. We call welcome back to Oregon. We talked about this at a prior commission meeting. That'll be a short phase, 2 to 4 weeks, targeted to Oregonians. Again, it'll be in response to a moment when we feel that we're given permission to do this, the day that Oregonians can travel freely again. By tying it to a single moment, it makes the work relevant and purposeful. We don't think that work has a long enough shelf life to be what we would normally deem as our inspiration spring campaign, because that work speaks to Oregonians and we want to speak to a larger audience. We want to show off what Oregon has to offer, the places, people, and feelings that you get when you're here. And that work lacks all the diversity of our regions, our people, and our culture that we need to convey to be welcoming to all. So that work that I'm referring to, Welcome Back to Oregon, I think it was back in June. We shared with you the concept and the script, but we didn't share the final product. And so I plan to share that with you here today. Before we do that, a quick refresh for you guys on the strategy behind the work. While the global pandemic stopped us from moving, it hasn't stopped us from dreaming of the day when we can travel. We wanted to tap into that feeling with a message to inspire Oregonians to explore Oregon once it's safe to roam again. Our approach was guided by 3 insights. Cabin fever. People have been cooped up in their homes and they're ready to explore. Close to home. When travel begins again, people will be a bit more cautious of where they travel. Budgets will also be lean. Therefore, we'll focus on local travel. Community pride. The pandemic has given us a stronger sense of community in our physical separation. In the midst of crisis, we see people coming together, whether that's helping each other get essential things to survive or helping our communities rebuild what we've lost by being more intentional about where we spend our money and where we travel. People want to support their communities now more than ever. This campaign is designed to make Oregon feel local and inspire Oregonians to explore their communities. So I'm going to share the 30-second. We were having some technical issues this morning, but I think Katie's been working behind the scenes to make this play. So fingers crossed. This is the 30-second version of Welcome Back to Oregon.
And we'll make all kinds of little bushes and trees and happy little things that live here in our world.
There it is. Still a little glitchy, but I think you guys get the idea. So moving on, I'll give seconds to get back into the presentation. So that will be phase 1. A quick, when we have a moment in time that we know we can travel again, we'll be ready with that creative in a Oregon-based buy. Then for phase 2, we're looking to we are going to bring back Oregon Slightly Exaggerated, round 3. The timing on that, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks. Think of our traditional targeting demos: 1849, Oregon, Seattle, Northern California, California, and Boise. It's interesting. So our friend, Ranger Melissa Meidel, reminded us of the optimism and hope of Oregon Slightly Exaggerated and what it brings. In a time when our state and the world feels a lot less magical, OSE speaks to a cultural truth and gives people the whimsy and uplift they're craving. So I want to share with you, so we were kind of in the process and figuring out strategies and where we were going. And I think out of the blue, we got an email to our inbox one afternoon. And I don't remember who, Mo maybe shared it with the team. And I'm just going to read you this email that we got from Melissa. And it was right during the fires. Dear Travel Oregon, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but please humor me by reading to the end. I'm a seasonal park ranger working almost exclusively on public lands in Oregon. I'm on the road with the BLM this year, but I've taken a new position roughly every 6 months for the last 10 years. I've worked for OPRD, BLM, USDA, NPS, and USFW. I'm from Oregon, and I've made a career out of trying to convince people that my home state is a magical place. Needless to say, when I first saw the slightly exaggerated ad campaign, I cried. It so perfectly captured so much of how I feel about what I do. I started obsessively collecting the posters and pins. Slightly more exaggerated hit on even more places I had lived and worked. I had a table at the Ashland Travel Center grand opening and picked up the t-shirt. I took photos at the murals. I'm such a huge fan. Then September 8th, 2020 happened. It wasn't my first time fielding phone calls about fire, but as the day went on and the blazes grew, the enormity of what was happening sank in. Many of those same places I had loved were just gone. The next day I pulled up slightly exaggerated on a government computer and cried again. My supervisor sent me home early. It was a rough week. On the 16th, I drove to the coast for some fresh air. As I drove, I thought about everything I know about fire response, fire ecology, fire succession, and the resiliency of our state. I thought of the characters in Slightly Exaggerated. What would they be doing right now? And where we need to go from here? It stuck with me. 4 a.m. that night, I wrote it all out. My idea for a third 90-second video. I call it Oregon Resilient. It was a catharsis to write. You may be noticing a pattern. I cried again. I shared what I wrote with a few friends and coworkers who encouraged me to send it along to you. I don't know what you'll do with it. I'm not a professional, and this is basically Travel Oregon fan fiction. I would like to see this idea or something like it put out there as a promise to the people of Oregon that we will get through this. This is the right moment to remember that she flies with her own wings. I realize this is clearly outside of the original goals of the ad campaign, and probably nothing will come of it. That's okay too. I wrote this for me. I'm handing it to you. I think in many ways that might be enough. Your ever enthusiastic fan, Ranger Melissa Meidel. So I share that with you. I was working on this presentation last night and sent Melissa an email and said, I apologize, it's very last minute, but I wanted to make sure you were invited to the meeting tomorrow because I was going to read your email. And we've had some correspondence back with Melissa after she first sent this, but she responded to me this morning early and said, I wouldn't miss it. So Melissa's on the call right now, and I just want to thank her for her kind words. I think we all needed it. So thanks, Melissa. Now I'm going to pull myself together and move on. All right. So Oregon, Slightly Exaggerated, round 3. So this work will help us solve a lot of the challenges we're facing. It gives us the ability to tell a story that shows Oregon year round. Tonally, it's grand, playful, and exciting. A great way to say we're back. It will inspire people to travel around Oregon from in-state and out of state. It's a world people know and love. This style of animation is evergreen, and we can produce it without being limited by COVID-19 restrictions. With this work, we have a chance to bring more people into the story of Oregon. More diverse interests, activities, cultures, and people. Not only does this give Oregonians a chance to be seen, but it's an invitation to welcome more diverse people to our state by showing them that their people and interests exist here in Oregon. We also have a chance to lean into the time we're in, a time where tourism has been shaken, communities have been transformed, and an awakening to the experience and visibility of all people has led to a relentless demand for change. Okay, so the creative. Move ahead one slide, please. Oh, yeah, perfect. So our first 2 runs at Oregon Slightly Exaggerated attempted to capture the emotional experience of visiting Oregon, intangible energy and emotions that couldn't be captured in photos or film. So we created fantastical creatures and characters that brought the different regions to life and filled them with Oregon's magic. Because nature was always the focus, we missed a big part of Oregon's story. So we think it's time to focus on Oregon's culture and people and the magic that comes with them. It's an energy that is unique to Oregon too, one that also needs to be slightly exaggerated in order to capture it. Using animation for travel was a bold approach that paid off big for us, but a lot has happened since then. We're already seeing some copycats. And as the travel industry reels from COVID-19, it's safe to assume a lot of travel ads will be front-loaded with animation due to production realities. If we want to stay ahead of the game, we need to zig when the rest of the industry zags. And by that, I mean the competition's creative has been focused on big, epic outdoor imagery. We'll instead focus on our culture and community with high quality creative. So now I'm going to share with you the script. Please note this is very much a draft, it's directional. We're still working through locations, activities, and representation, but in general, we're very excited about the work. Let's see if I can make this. Hold on. Forgive me for reading this to you, but there's no other way to really do it. Only slightly exaggerated. This would be the 90-second anthem. Again, just a draft. We open on an overhead shot of a farmer's market where farmers and merchants unload their trucks and set up produce stands. We cut to the bustling crowd below. Suddenly, a man zips into the scene, pedaling a comically overloaded bicycle. He struggles to balance huge amounts of fruits, vegetables, fish, cheese, and bottles of wine. As he weaves through the crowd, he passes a number of stands such as Choi Kimchi and Freeland Spirits. There are also fantastical creatures such as mushrooms and ghosts selling wine and actual spirits. A bottle of wine shakes loose from the man's overloaded bike. The camera punches as he catches it midair. We're now in the Willamette Valley. A server uncorks the bottle of wine where a group of friends enjoy a tasting. The rounded splash of wine falls into the glass almost like a basketball into a hoop. The camera trucks into people laughing and stomping grapes at a grape stomping festival. The juices splash around to fill vats. In the background, we catch a glimpse of C.J. McCollum, Oregon's favorite wine connoisseur, toasting Bertnay Faucin's Oregon's first black winemaker. Vineyard workers roll a barrel of wine, which become a barrel with a clown inside at the Pendleton Roundup in Eastern Oregon. We're now inside the Pendleton Roundup, where a cowboy riding a horse brings the classic poster to life. A cloud of dust transitions us to the Native American Happy Canyon show, which lights up the night. Vibrant hints of color flash from their ceremonial clothes as they dance. The flowing feathers on a costume transition to a bird flying over the Oregon coast. It gently rains on a cabin. Rain sprites dance on the roof. The camera lowers through the roof into the cabin to reveal a group of friends relaxing inside, reading, playing board games, and cozying up near the fireplace. The pattering of the dancing rain on the roof mixes into the musical score. The fireplace transitions to a campfire in Central Oregon where a family cooks dinner and treats over a rock-enclosed fire pit. The score is now being played on a lone harmonica. The fire anthropomorphizes into a multi-armed hibachi chef. The flame snaps his fingers to roast 2 kids' marshmallows. He acrobatically spins a pan of Jiffy Pop, which erupts into a fountain of popcorn. He perfectly sears a steak before flipping a group of nearby brats and sausages. The campers politely clap. The flame takes a bow just as poof, he's extinguished with a bucket of water. The silhouettes of nearby campers inside tents make elaborate shadow puppets. The shadow animals come alive in fantastic ways before transitioning us to actors on stage at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Southern Oregon. The audience is enwrapped by a magical production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Titania, the queen of fairies, summons magical creatures to fill the stage. The line between performers and forest sprites is blurred as a lush forest overtakes the stage with fog and mist from Watson Falls. Deciduous leaves rapidly change color. Suddenly, the yellow car from the original OSE spot bursts through the mist, and we're now in the Columbia River Gorge driving westbound through the Dalles. The car passes the Columbia Gorge Express bus. We catch a glimpse of Park Ranger Melissa walking through the nearby forest. Inside the car, a young Latina girl who rode the flower bunny in the first spot clutches her bunny stuffed animal as she snores in the back seat. The mom and dad enjoy the sunset over the horizon. Snow gently falls as the camera rises up over Mount Hood. The lights from ski resorts glow in the distance, and we can see for hundreds of miles in every direction. The super fades up, only slightly exaggerated, Travel Oregon. In a final beat, the weatherman putters by on a snowy cloud. It's amazing. A 90-second spot takes 5 minutes to read. So thank you for bearing with me for that. And again, that's just directional. So with this work, a North Star for this work, as with all our work, is making sure that it is welcoming to all. With this goal in mind, we're expanding our efforts we undertook during the first OSE campaign to gain insights that guide how we represent people and communities authentically through our work. To do this, we're working with Wieden+Kennedy to facilitate focus groups with 4 of their internal agency affinity groups: We Black, Latinx, W Queer, and Asiancy. In addition, Travel Oregon will lead an additional focus group to gauge insights from non-advertising folks, as well as other communities not listed above. These focus groups are meant to facilitate discussion, highlighting themes and nuances within the creative that we can address to make all communities feel invited and welcome to Oregon. We anticipate that the information derived will be insightful for the film creative, content production, and related consumer campaign outcomes. And I'm going to share a timeline, but please just take it with a very large grain of salt. This is hypothetical. What we're trying to do is have this ready for the 2 phases to launch in May. We think that'll be the earliest we'll be able to be in the marketplace with this type of inspirational creative. But this is just illustrative to show you some of the key steps along the way. And also, we're building this in such a way that I've used this to describe our, it's like Greg was saying, shattering his crystal ball. I think I've shattered mine as well. Every time we meet with the governor's office and get, approval to start moving forward on it, cases spike or things change. So we've been through this for the last 9 months or so, and knowing that we're building it so that if it's not April and it's summer, all 4 seasons will be included in the creative. So we'll be able to roll this out anytime, but we're shooting for May. And during that time, we're really, so much has changed that, we're working to look at our targeting, our audience that we've traditionally felt most likely to visit, as well as our geos, considering COVID and restrictions and things like that. So we've got some time to relook at our targeting. So really right now, we've already began the focus group work. Hope to have that wrapped up next month. We're already reviewing our media and basically our audience demos and our geos, our geographic targeting. In February, we'll review initial media plans. We'll begin to build co-ops for the industry. Then we review gating criteria. Well, we're continually reviewing our gating criteria for when we can roll this out. And then, like I said, hopefully in May, we can pull the trigger on this work. And that is what I have. Happy to entertain any questions.
Well, Kevin, as you do, I will. I wanted to make sure I let the commissioners know that Kevin's emotions are not contrived. When we did our dress rehearsal, it took a while to get through the dress rehearsal, and it's there's probably no higher honor for us as members of the Travel Oregon team than to be able to represent the pride and the passion that Oregonians have in their state, whether it's through our marketing, our sales, or our preservation of this place that we all have the privilege of promoting. And as Kevin noted, we have, he had reached out to Melissa to make sure she was going to be able to attend the meeting today. And we have the ability to bring her live into our meeting right now and afford her the opportunity to be able to say a few words to us as well. So Kevin, thank you for your leadership in this space. Thank you for reaching out to Melissa and making sure she knew about the meeting. And at this time, I would like to ask the commissioners to join me in welcoming Melissa to the commission meeting today to share a few words with us. Melissa, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Todd. This is exciting. I mean, I have my posters on the back of my wall. There's not much to say that I didn't already say in the email. And I think it's very good that Kevin read it, because I did tear up just hearing him read what I had said, and I'm the one who said it. This particular ad campaign captures something special and important to my heart, and being able to, I am incredibly grateful that my message reached someone at a time when it needed to be reached. And I'm extremely honored. This is the first time I've heard that you wanted to put me in the next video. And that's just like, I wish I'd had a reaction video going, like a YouTube reaction, like, it's been not just this ad campaign, but listening in on your minutes has been informative, and even just all of the move forward with the global ad campaign and the survey work and data-driven piece that it comes together, and all the different pieces that make Travel Oregon and Oregon Tourism Board so effective. A lot of park rangers work across the country. They'll get in with the National Park Service, and they'll use the National Park Service to go around the entire United States. And it has been my honor and my privilege and my conscious effort to stay in Oregon for the last decade, and be able to touch back with you guys. You're always, the magazine handout with the right map for the person who doesn't know where they're going. And yeah, you mean so much to me. Thank you for including me in this.
We're the lucky ones, Melissa, because you've chosen Oregon, and you made the effort. You cared enough to reach out to us with your thoughts, not only about the campaign, but what a future one may look like in the middle of such tragedy as those catastrophic wildfires were befalling Oregon. So thank you for that, commissioners. We've got Melissa here with us. I want to afford you an opportunity if you had anything you'd like to share with her while we have her here with us.
Some of you've already said things. The notes in the chat are quite interesting. Thank you so much.
For me, this is Greg Willits, and in my industry, we always hear about the problems or the complications or the challenges, and it is always wonderful to hear a well-sculpted conversation about what we're doing right. And thank you for that reminder, and thank you for the work you do with the forests and national forests. Thank you.
Yeah, Melissa, I just wanted to say thank you as well. And obviously, this was really, you delivered the message at the right time. And Kevin, I commend you for showing your vulnerability. I have always believed in leading with vulnerability, and I think it makes you that much more effective in what you do. So thank you for showing your emotion today in the meeting.
I want to echo that, and just, it really is inspiring to hear how Travel Oregon's work is touching individuals, and you're doing a great job, Kevin, just leading that during a hard time. So thank you so much.
I can't help but think that if Commissioner Sugihara were here, if Kenji were here right now, he would be trying to hug you, Melissa, through his camera.
We all need a group hug.
That's right. Amidst chest heaving, racking sobs. That really was incredibly beautiful. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing that. And Richard, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Everyone's crying. We're moving past toxic masculinity. Everyone's allowed to cry now.
Well, Melissa, thank you again for joining us here today, but more importantly, thank you for your devotion to Oregon and for taking the time to share those emotions and those thoughts and your pride and your passion in this place with us. It's obviously it's inspiring, that next chapter of Oregon, only slightly exaggerated, that's going to bring tremendous benefit to the state's economy at a time that we're going to so desperately need it as we come back from this pandemic. So thank you for that. Commissioners, did you have any questions for Kevin regarding his presentation? I do want to give you an opportunity if there's anything you'd like to ask him.
I do have a comment for, well, first Chair Youngblood and then for Kevin. Yes, Scott, you're always paying close attention and you did see me wipe away a tear. It's true. Let's see. So, but for Kevin, thanks for the presentation. Much appreciated. I know you started out by saying you can't predict the future, but I am glad that in the end you did give us some idea of the time frame that you think this might roll out in. And I am certainly hopeful that that Travel Oregon and your team can get back to what you do by May with the rollout of some new material to encourage people to visit within our state and visit to our state. So just thank you for that. We want to be good for our statewide destination management organization, our RDMOs and our DMOs, all to be able to get back to doing what they do, what they need to do, what they love to do, what they want to do. So I'm really looking forward to that day and Travel Oregon's contribution to that. So thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, we feel like it's so hard. You've got all these, remember, I don't need to tell you, there's an entire team behind me, an entire agency behind me. And we definitely felt like we've been, and for the right reasons, for, the safety of Oregonians and, taking a step back to knock this virus out so that we can do what we need to do has been extremely difficult. I mean, it's our DNA to market. So we've been pushing everywhere we can.
Kevin, I have a question. At the last meeting, I asked you and Katie, what efforts were we doing to help support Travel Portland? I continue to be so concerned about that because Portland, in my mind, is the gateway for many visitors. And so I know we only had a meeting a couple months ago, but what efforts are you working on to continue to support Travel Portland?
Thank you for the question. We continue to meet. I have a standing meeting. I think I can't remember if I had that meeting when we last spoke, but with Greg Newland, who's my counterpart at Travel Portland, and they're kind of in our boat as well, waiting for that. They think spring is when they're going to start to market again. So we're following their lead there. Hopefully, I mean, they align. So we're doing it at the same time. They're working on, much like us, their work is more internal, less working with an agency, and even more so for them. So they're figuring out with limited resources who is their target audience, and not wanting to spend money, until the economics of it are right, the timing is right. So it's spring for them as well. The last couple of meetings with them have been trying to align as best we can on the gift of Oregon work. So we bring, like I said, it's a standing meeting, which is Greg and I, but we bring in others, when the gift of Oregon work started materializing, we had a bigger gathering there. So we're meeting weekly. There's some other smaller tactical things, but we're just making sure that we're aligned with them. So when we come out in the spring, we're drafting off each other as best we can. And now that we have this framework, like our team's next job is to start thinking about what do the cooperative marketing opportunities look like that come under that? Are they OTAs? What are we going to be building under that? And I would anticipate we'll have some, I will say that we will have the most robust cooperative marketing opportunities that we've ever had, because we know the regions want to get behind it. They want to market. They may not have the resources that they've had in the past. And so, we are just starting that work now to say, all right, if this is our direction, what do those co-ops look like? And how do we deploy them to get the highest share of voice we can?
Commissioner DeNova, I would just support that. And just really say we have a couple key opportunities coming up in front of us. And there's also some nuances of how Travel Oregon Marketing has organized itself with our vendors as well, is that we do within our contracts and within our partners have the ability to have those robust co-ops. And then within the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program, there are some nuances with how our partners can work in-state and out-of-state with marketing dollars. And so that's something, again, with a lot of collaboration that we're looking towards the spring of just being clear on how we can really work together, exactly what Kevin was saying, and then how we can make sure that we're leveraging our agencies and our partners to deliver those really great marketing programs. Because something that I think that we're also anticipating, and what's built into Kevin saying that we're reviewing our media target, is that we do anticipate that once there is like a travel now, we have the ability to have a travel now message, we really want to be coordinated so that it's not kind of cannibalizing each other with limited media dollars. And so our team is just starting to work on the menu of investment of opportunities for the regional program, and then we'll be building those out with partners, and we'll continue to keep the commission updated on what that looks like.
Thank you both. That answered my question.
Kevin, I had a comment. First, thank you for your presentation and the timeline that you presented. I feel like during this time, as we go into, the latter part of winter and early spring, that, how do we reach to those that have cabin fever and are going to be traveling anyways, maybe even if restrictions aren't completely lifted. I mean, some of my thoughts, like I look at October and November, and, Southern Oregon, it was amazing, the travel that we were seeing. And honestly, it was safe. I mean, and so to me, I think, I know you guys are pushing back with the governor's office, but I feel like there's an opportunity to be educating, people on planning for the summer or planning for your future vacation, and teasing them with, this campaign that sounds amazing. But how do we stay in front of our future guests and continue to entice people to be planning their summer vacations? Because people are planning. And so what is Oregon going to be one of their vacations this summer? And I think, we really need to do our job in doing that. And I'm concerned waiting till May might be too long.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Kevin or Katie or regarding the campaign of the messaging? All right. Kevin, thank you. And Katie, thanks also for jumping in and sharing those perspectives as well. Lucinda, it was a great point regarding Portland, and Don, as you said, threading the needle between inspiring and advising is obviously where we're finding ourselves right now. And that's how we've been gauging our work, both in looking at everything from the status of COVID-19 in Oregon, where the cases are at, and also the restrictions that have been put in place by our elected officials, and also looking at consumer sentiment and where their heart is at as well. And all of those things are taken into account, as are your thoughts and comments, because you're there, you're on the ground, you're experiencing it in your properties, and that insight is invaluable to us as well. So thank you for bringing that forward. I appreciate both of you and the concerns that you brought forward and expressed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that wraps up our report outs for today. I guess what I would say, just kind of in closing, is as I'm sure is evident to all of you, is we're really leaning heavily into our strategic preparation and planning right now, as well as our ability to be nimble, our ability to be responsive. We've pivoted, we've adapted, and we've pivoted again. And you know that because you've been along with us every step of the way. And all of us at Travel Oregon are anxious for a new year to begin. And in light of that, and perhaps in view of that, the expressions that we've received, expressions of love and support from friends and colleagues, people like Melissa, as well as tour operators in Germany or in Japan or in the UK or in Cleveland. Those bring us a renewed sense of focus that what we're doing at Travel Oregon, that vision that we've embraced of a better life for all Oregonians through strong, sustainable communities that welcome a diversity of explorers, is as valid and as valuable now as it's ever been. Candidly, right now, the path forward doesn't appear quite as clear as perhaps it once did. And as I noted in my cover letter to the commissioners in the strategic plan progress report, that maybe, just maybe right now, it's our turn to be the explorers, the ones who are in that unfamiliar area, as we're looking for ways that we can best aid in the resiliency and the recovery of the tourism industry. But this I know for sure. We're going to come through this. And I believe when we come out the other side, thinking ahead to that solstice, the birth of the sun, I believe it's going to bring an even deeper level of respect and appreciation for Oregonians, for the cultures that make up this state, and for the lands that we have the privilege of promoting, more so than we could have ever imagined before. People are going to travel again. And the value of travel will be more evident and more triggered than ever. And I just want you as commissioners to know, as we bring this particular meeting to a close, on behalf of all of us on the Travel Oregon staff team, how grateful we are for your leadership and for your steadfastness in traveling alongside us on this journey of 2020. So with that, Chair Youngblood, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Wow, what a hot potato. How do you even speak after that? Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Kevin and Katie. Thank you. Commissioners, forgive me, do any of you have announcements or additional business for the commission, or stories, anecdotes, thoughts, quandaries?
I didn't share earlier, I think you all know that I'm incredibly proud to work for the Mill Casino, which is owned and operated by the Coquille Indian Tribe. And I'm happy to report that the Coquille Indian Tribe has a new development opportunity in Medford. Last month, they sent out a release that they will be in partnership with Margaritaville Enterprises to bring a new 111-room Compass Hotel to the Medford area. And it's expected to open in early 2022. This is obviously incredibly exciting for the tribe and their economic development, and also for the economic recovery of South Medford and the Phoenix area. So really excited to work for such an amazing organization, an amazing tribe who looks long range for the success not only of themselves, but for the communities that they reside in.
Another story of development and rebirth. Thank you, Lucinda. Commissioners, anyone else?
I just have a small hope when we do get to meet in person again, that we can pick up where we left off. I think there's a lot of fantastic news coming out of Klamath Falls area, the Klamath River, and it'd be nice to be down there and resume where we left off, and including Welch's, those communities I look forward to visiting. And I know from my own personal experience, they feel honored in having us in their region. and in their towns and showing off, showcasing their assets. And hopefully we can resume that and get back to Lakeview or one of those communities in Welch's down the road. Thank you.
Oh, that's brilliant, Greg. Where we left off in Independence, I got to have breakfast that last morning before we all parted company with Bob Hackett from Travel Southern Oregon. And we were talking about the opportunity to go to Lakeview. And of course, you put a quarter in Bob and start talking about dark skies. And oh my gosh, I could not have looked more forward to anything we've done as a commission than that. So I echo your sentiment and applaud that idea. Commissioners, anyone else? All righty. Well, it's a season for gratitude, and it's a season for giving, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities, even distant as ones like this may be, for us to get to spend time together. Thank you all again for your time, for your industry, for your resilience, and your participation in this immensely important body of work. Our next Tourism Commission public meeting will take place on February 23rd, 2021. And with that, friends, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Holidays, Mia.
Yep.
Whoever did that, thank you so much.